Welcome to the Training Stimulus podcast. Today's episode is a controversial one. We are joined by a very special guest, Mr. James Cooper, who's a good friend of mine. I was recently out visiting him for his wedding in Dubai, and we thought we'd catch up because he needed to get something off his chest. James and I discuss Hyrox and why he's not the biggest fan of it. We get into what he thinks a true hybrid athlete is and discuss his mixed martial arts training and how it has some parallels to CrossFit training and mixed modal fitness. James and I have known each other for a long time now. We used to work together in Gymbox Farringdon in 2017, and we've had lots of interesting and inappropriate conversations since, which you'll get a small flavour of today. And yeah, he's got loads of great insight. He's been in the industry a long time and has accomplished some great things. So he is a third Dan black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu under Roger Gracie. And he's also got a nutrition degree from King's College London and runs successful businesses in London under BTX as a personal training studio, and also with his Kaizen Warrior program online. I think you guys will either love this one or you'll hate it if you're a Hyroxer, but I think it's always worth starting the conversation because we do get some useful conclusions out of it. But I'll leave it there, guys, so you can make up your own mind. Please check it out and let us know what you think of the episode. Let's get into it.
Straight in.
Straight. What about the podcast?
No kissing.
No tongue kissing.
Yeah.
Like the French do.
So I'll do an intro after the podcasts, and I can only say nice things behind your back. But
You have a rolling podcast, but literally like Joe Rogan, where they already started.
Yeah,
we did that for a bit in our podcast, then eventually we're like, we're not good enough to do that. We can't do that.
can't pull it off.
Yeah,
well, I'm going to try. I'm going to try my best. And we're just going to continue what we're talking about before pressing records with a topic that I think a lot of people want to hear you talk about: your love of Hyrox.
It's my favourite.
It's your favourite. How did it start?
My love of Hyrox in the actual reality, ain't it?
Both.
Yeah, of course.
Frame it for the listeners to give a bit of context around why people associate you with Hyrox.
Probably because I'm mentally ill, but personality disorder. No, the reason being is there's a lot of these particularly personal trainers more so than people doing it. I think that Hyrox, look, the truth is those who functional training or hybrid type training, right? And what does that mean? So I like the idea of hybrid training. There's nothing wrong with that. I think I have to caveat that. I think it's fantastic. The whole idea of CrossFit was that people like the idea of not just being a bodybuilder, like being big, not just being strong, being a powerlifter, and not just being fit like an endurance athlete. They wanted to be actually athletic, so hybrids would be being physically strong, mobile, and cardiovascularly fit.
Yeah.
And the way you do that is how athletes always trained, which is CrossFit, which would be gymnastic style training, weight training, which is Olympic lifting, and some sort of cardio.
Yeah.
CrossFit, the reason why it did so well was the community aspect of CrossFit. That's why it's done so well. And the idea of being an athlete, athletic, right? Even if you didn't play a sport. I think everyone likes the idea of that.
Sure.
But that is how athletes have trained forever.
Yeah.
Doing that.
Yeah.
It's not new. But Greg Glassman, who started CrossFit, the idea, the brand of CrossFit, is want to package it up, which means a great businessman. So to move on to Hyrox, get back to Hyrox. Hyrox, the reason why it existed was because the entry level for CrossFit was higher because you had to actually be skilled and actually be athletic.
Yes.
Hyrox, you basically, I mean, how he describes someone, you just want to be the person that orders coffee at Gales and complains to staff, like a Karen, basically. It's true. It's the Karen of the gym, right?
Yeah.
A Hyrox athlete.
Yeah.
And then the worst part about it, so I'll go into that, and then, so basically what it was, the Hyrox thing, the reason why it existed was because the barrier of entry was low. You basically do, I think you do a run, isn't it a 1,000 meter run?
Yeah. It's 8 stations, 8 single kilometer runs.
I like the fact to criticize and I don't know what it is.
Yeah. But I think the reason I like talking to you about it is because of something we talk about a lot. And I think I'll say it in the intro, but you're a very accomplished martial artist, and having competed at a very high level in martial arts, which I consider as the epitome of any sport, is...
It's the purest form. Being
Yeah.
martial arts, the purest form of sport.
Exactly.
That's what everyone really wants. We play sports, a posture, but really what we want is to be able to do a martial art and be able to fight.
Exactly. Like all competition is an abstraction away from a fight.
Absolutely.
That's how I think about it.
Absolutely.
You're trying to see who would win, and maybe you're playing with a ball to see who can put it in a net more than somebody else. But at the end of the day, you're trying to beat your opposition, whether it's in a team or one-on-one. And I think combat is the purest expression of that. And having got more into it over the last few years, you appreciate how that, to me, is the truest expression of rounded fitness. You need to be strong, you need to be mobile, you need to be agile, you need to be coordinated, you need to think fast on your feet, and the consequences of getting something wrong are the highest. And I think to segue from Hyrox into martial arts, maybe just so I don't butcher it, could you give a quick background into your BJJ story, and then when you started transitioning, and then also when you started transitioning towards mixed martial arts?
I was, because your podcast, I wanted to be nice. As soon as I transitioned, I was like, and also into martial arts. Yeah. So basically, it's where everyone starts martial arts. So we can go into that a bit later, but I started martial arts. So I started watching the UFC when I was young. I must have been around 12 years old. I was watching the UFC. I was actually the UFC game with a Dreamcast.
Oh, wow.
There's a throwback. There's a proper throwback. But anyway, so there's UFC game on there. Anyway, and I started watching what is this UFC type thing. Started watching it. And the UFC basically was a form, everyone knows what it is now. Yeah. But was the first place that actually, before the UFC started, people thought the toughest person in the world was a boxer, right? The heavyweight world champion was the ultimate accomplishment for a man. Yeah. It was, right? You got Mike Tyson. The baddest man on the planet was Mike Tyson. Yeah. Then what happened with the first UFC, in 1993, the first UFC, which Royce Gracie won. He was a jiu-jitsu guy, Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy. People didn't know what that was. And basically what happened was, you'd think the boxer would win, but actually this guy, who was a little Brazilian guy, would basically take someone down and submit them. Yeah. And people thought, well, this doesn't make any sense. I thought the toughest guy in the world was a boxer, right? So it threw people off, and that's what started this revolution of Brazilian jiu-jitsu and grappling martial arts. So I saw that. Obviously, that was a lot later when I started watching the UFC, but there's a guy called Frank Mir who was UFC heavyweight champion at the time. Yeah. Frank Mir, he used to say the style. Now they're pure mixed martial artists. They need to know everything. But back then, he said their style was then this guy did Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So I thought, wow, I need to learn this Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Looking all over where it's in London, and now every street corner has a jiu-jitsu academy. It's the most fashionable thing in the world. And what probably worse than that way to Hyrox. It's ridiculous, right? Everyone does jiu-jitsu. So I basically was in central London. W.H. Smith, they had a rack of magazines, and had Martial Arts Illustrated. Martial Arts Illustrated in the front had Roger Gracie is in London. And I saw this and literally was like, oh my God, it's in London. I need to go there. So I found out it was in Kensal Road, which was basically about 40 minutes from my parents, had 2 buses, etc. when I was a kid. I think I was 14, and basically just went there, and that was it. And then literally just started training jiu-jitsu and fell in love with it. And I was actually boxing before then for 2 years.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
I finished the boxing club. Okay. Before Anthony Joshua started boxing, actually, and he's a bit older than me. So he started quite late. But there's a guy called Derek Chisora, everyone knows, who's top 10 in the world now, top 5, I think, before for a title twice, world title. And he was there back then, how long ago it was. But unfortunately, I sort of gave up the boxing a bit and then moved into the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Yeah. And then just did that for the last 20 years. I've been Jiu-Jitsu for.
Amazing. Yeah. And third Dan, is that right?
Third Dan black belt. So I got my black belt 11 years ago. I got my black belt 23, which was at the time, not 23 now. Because I was going to say I was the youngest black belt in the UK ever. I don't know if I am now. I don't know, but at the time I was. Yeah. And so I loved it, and I came second in the Europeans. I've got second in the worlds. I've been doing it for quite a while, and now the reason I originally did it actually was try mixed martial arts, was to get into mixed martial arts. That's the reason everyone starts martial arts.
You had the game plan.
Yeah, back then. I just got really engrossed in jiu-jitsu. Yeah. But now, literally now, I'm not young at all. I mean, I'll be annoyed if I didn't do MMA. Look, I'm not going to be in the UFC, etc., right? But I definitely will be happy to tick some boxing and get some MMA fights in there. So this year I'm going to concentrate on jiu-jitsu, win a few more tournaments, a decent level medal or black belt, a few high-level tournaments at the Europeans, etc. Once I've done that this year, is do some MMA for 2 or 3 years, have a few fights and be like, that's enough kind of thing. So I think when I'm older, I know I'll regret not doing it.
Yeah. And I I think one of the reasons why we like talking about it so much is there's so many parallels with mixed martial arts and CrossFit and mixed martial training as well. And I think there is a lot of parallels in terms of how you approach both sports. And given you're so accomplished in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you have a couple of years of boxing. When you decided you wanted to move towards mixed martial arts, how did you approach that problem?
It's a good question. So with mixed martial arts and interest, it's like the CrossFit thing we spoke about, it's relevant. And we'll go back to Hyrox, and I haven't got off scot-free. But it's actually relevant. I should go through this first, explain. So I think it explains why I have a problem with Hyrox. Yeah. So with mixed martial arts, you have the individual skill sets, right? So you have the grappling on the ground, which is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. There's other forms, etc. they say they do, but the purest form is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, is the most accomplished martial art at that level. You have wrestling, which is basically taking someone down or stopping someone taking you down. So you control where the fight goes. Yeah. Which, if we're going to pick a base, pure wrestling, Olympic wrestling, freestyle wrestling is the best base now for mixed martial arts, because you can decide where the fight goes. Yeah. Also, wrestlers will tend to transition into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu quicker than a Jiu-Jitsu guy will get better at wrestling.
Why do you think that is?
They're better athletes. Yeah. Jiu-Jitsu, factually, if you talk to any proper high-level mixed martial arts coach, if you pick one martial art, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is the best martial art in the world. It is by far the best martial art in the world. You get guys with black belt Jiu-Jitsu, and a guy goes wrestles, but he has no. So remember, so they don't do any of the other martial arts, right? Yeah. Her wrestlers never done jiu-jitsu, they'll get cemented. They'll take someone down and get the arm broken. Yeah. Or choked unconscious.
And almost the fact that it works for people that are less athletic is a selling point, because the martial art itself is so effective. You don't need to be so athletic to be successful with it. Whereas with wrestling, if you're not a great athlete, you're not going to be the top level. No. Is that fair?
But at jiu-jitsu as well, I mean, you're going to have to be strong at one point. But you can be very, very proficient at jiu-jitsu by not being that athletic. Yeah. And wrestling, you're going to have to be able to be very mobile and strong. You do have to be able to do certain movements. And then you have the stand-up portion of mixed martial arts, which is technically Thai boxing. So this is the whole point about the CrossFit thing. If you have someone, so people think to themselves, you have guys who are very, very high-level kickboxing Thai boxers. Yeah. And then you watch them at MMA. There's a guy called Gokhan Saki, who's one of the best kickboxers in the world. He's been knocked out by Khalil Rountree in MMA. Khalil Rountree is a great stand fighter for MMA, but he's not a world-class kickboxer. Yeah. So how come Khalil Rountree is getting knocked out in MMA? Same with a guy called Rodolfo Vieira, which is world champion, 180cc, which is like the Nogi Olympics. Yeah. But he's been submitted in MMA. And Jacare, etc. The point is, anyway, that skill set, they're not necessarily, they're losing in MMA at their skill set. Yeah. Does that mean MMA fights are better jiu-jitsu guys? No, it doesn't. The real reason is MMA is almost a separate skill in itself to combine all of those things together. So you have someone that can be very, very good at all three things, but if they're not good at MMA fights, combining those things, they're never a good MMA fighter. So it's transitioning to those two things. You can be a very good kickboxer, but what happens when you have a good kickboxer when someone's threatening a takedown? It's different. Yeah. When you kickbox with the threat of a takedown, the style changes. Another one to add to that, not your kickboxing, but then you have smaller gloves. You can't guard with your hands like this. Like in boxing, you can cover up this with your knuckles to your forehead. Yeah. If you do that with small 4-ounce gloves, someone's going to crack you. Yeah. And that's so the reason why it's so important. You need to be good at all of them, proficient at all of them, but you also need to be able to combine all of them and understand how to combine all of them. Yeah. In MMA. So when it comes to CrossFit, being a complete athlete, whatever way, CrossFit is a sport. You have Olympic lifting, you have gymnastics, and you have running, rowing, I think skiing. I think you have skiing.
Yeah,
right?
all cardio, yeah.
All the cardio, assault bike. And you also gymnastics already. So you have all of those skills. But if you got a guy who's an Olympic gymnast, right, a better example, you're a good weightlifter. Yeah. You get a good weightlifter, but then you have them rowing first and they have a high heart rate. When it comes to Olympic lifting, sometimes you can be less good at Olympic lifting. The guy's not an Olympic lifter. Yeah. Because the guy is used to working under fatigue from coming off a rower. Yeah. Makes sense. Exactly. That is a skill in itself. Yeah. So being good at your sport means being able to combine all of those. Yeah. However, when you're training, you don't literally just, what most CrossFit gyms do is they make them do a WOD, which is combining all of them repeatedly. Yeah. Two things are wrong with that. Number one is because you're so fatigued, you can't work on that skill. So if you're doing doing Olympic lifting, you're new to Olympic lifting, and I'm trying to teach you Olympic lifting while you're exhausted from the rower, you're never going to become good at it. Yeah. if I just said, okay, fine, let's concentrate on Olympic lifting, and you honed that skill, and made you better at Olympic lifting, that's fantastic. You'll be literally better at Olympic lifting. However, but then what happens when you're fatigued?
Yeah.
So you have to do a bit of both.
Exactly. You got to do it fresh before you can do it tired. Like if you can't do it well when you're fresh, you've got no chance of doing it well when you're tired.
Yeah, it's programming. It's like jiu-jitsu. If I tell someone to do a technique, say an armbar, whatever it might be, a choke, if you are doing it when you're tired, the thing is literally how. So if you're expected to do it while you're tired, you have to be able to expect to do it. You have to be able to do it fresh first.
Exactly.
And once you're fresh, then you get under pressure. Your heart rate's higher under pressure.
Yeah.
It's the same with the Olympic lifting movements.
Yeah, totally. And okay, let's bring it back to your solving of the MMA problem. So you know you're very good at jiu-jitsu. You're going to continue to maintain that as a strength. And the other two key areas would be wrestling, clinch, and stand-up striking. How are you structuring your training to make sure you bring yourself to a good level in those other two areas
without losing your skill at jiu-jitsu?
Yes,
because a lot of people do that.
And obviously, so I guess the way I'm sort of meandering towards is you're now trying to optimize how you as an individual can be the best overall MMA fighter. Like, no offense, but it's probably a bit late in the day for you to become world-class at striking or anywhere
of course it is,
you are in BJJ.
Because you're proficient enough.
You can still be a phenomenal mixed martial artist. So how are you thinking about plugging those two gaps?
So it's interesting, actually. So particularly MMA, it's different, but it's always a bit different to CrossFit. So you can be, the issue with a lot of people in MMA, what they'll do is say they're a good jiu-jitsu guy, say a good Olympic wrestler, they stop wrestling. I've seen this in MMA. So an example, the guy called Georges St. Pierre. Yeah. Well, no, he's one of the best MMA fighters ever, world champion. And the guy called Josh Koscheck, who he fought. Josh Koscheck was a national level wrestler. He was national champion of wrestling in the US. And Georges St. Pierre out-wrestled him. Took him down repeatedly when they fought. Josh Koscheck, the reason that happened was because partially because MMA, because of striking involved, and you get thrown off by the striking. But the main reason Josh Koscheck stopped wrestling, he stopped doing what his strength was. So the first thing I'm going to answer that question is, first thing, I'm still doing jiu-jitsu regularly because that's your strength. Yeah. Then what you'll do is basically add those two in. Add those two in, and you learn to wrestle with a wrestling coach, and learn to wrestle. So do your kickboxing with a kickboxing coach, which we're doing this morning. Yeah. But also people that understand your wrestling, is it for MMA? Yeah. Or is it for wrestling? Yeah. Two separate things. Same with the kickboxer.
Yeah. I think that's the key part, is the end goal is to integrate it with your wrestling and your jiu-jitsu. And you can liken that to CrossFit weightlifting. The end goal is to be able to do weightlifting under fatigue, to be able to cycle a barbell, and it's very different to doing pure Olympic weightlifting if you're going to go to the Olympics, for example. Obviously, there's a lot of parallels in the technique, but Olympic weightlifting, if you're going to do 20 reps of a medium light weight, is a different technique to if you're doing a 1 rep max.
Completely different.
And that's something that was really cool to see this morning, was that I've been doing a bit of kickboxing as pure kickboxing, but there's a few major technique differences actually in how you throw basic kicks for mixed martial arts, because there are new and different threats on the table. So you need to, protect yourself in different ways, because there's the threat of a takedown. Yeah. And I think I find that fascinating, because people look at each of the individual martial arts and think there are right ways to do things. But in mixed martial arts, you've got to consider everything together and the overall threat.
But that, to me, it sounds really weird. I understand that kickboxing is a sport, etc. It's a sport. Yeah. But to me, when you learn a martial art, it should be for MMA. I know it's wrong maybe to say that, because it doesn't make any sense. Same with jiu-jitsu, right? The reason why jiu-jitsu guys don't do it as well in MMA, it's not because jiu-jitsu is not applicable to MMA. Yeah. The type of jiu-jitsu learning is not applicable to MMA. Yeah. Where someone's going to go, it's going to pull guard, be on their back, try and attack the legs or something. It can work in MMA, don't get me wrong. Yeah. But the type of jiu-jitsu they're using does not work well in MMA. And if you look at the old school guys like Roger, my instructor Roger Gracie, his jiu-jitsu suits MMA more because stylistically it was very old-fashioned, which is made for fighting.
Yeah. Yeah. And didn't he, gets some criticism for having like a very simple game, but it was just brutally effective.
Yeah, just very effective. Literally, he does exactly what in jiu-jitsu, he does exactly what white belts do, but then no one can stop it.
Yeah.
He obviously doesn't do what white belts do. What I meant is use the same techniques, but done perfectly.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I completely agree with your comments about it's all about coming back to fighting. And I think CrossFit is similar in that because people are getting generally physically prepared for the sport of CrossFit, it actually takes them away from actual general physical preparedness, because they're now optimizing for CrossFit sport performance,
Which is sports,
which is actually divergent from
actually get rid of sports, yeah.
Exactly, from general fitness. So you're now training your body in a quite specific way to be good at CrossFit, in the same way that you might learn a specific jiu-jitsu technique to win jiu-jitsu competitions that actually would get you hurt in a mixed martial arts fight.
Yes, it's exactly the very smart. You said it's exactly the same.
Yeah.
So, example of the CrossFit thing, right? Was it was who we spoke about before.
Jason Khalipa.
So Jason Khalipa and Matt Fraser both started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Jason Khalipa, I think he's a black belt, maybe he's a brown belt still, but competes in Jiu-Jitsu. And what he said was he was a CrossFit athlete, and the whole point of CrossFit was to be hybrid. However, him calling himself a hybrid athlete, then he started Jiu-Jitsu. He said he was ridiculously unfit, he was getting injured, he felt quite weak. And they said, well, what is this hybrid for?
Yeah.
What's being an athlete for? Because I'm a clearly non-athlete, I'm grappling with people and I'm weak, I feel slow, I feel like I'm very injury prone.
Yeah.
So you're not an athlete, right?
Agree, yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. I think for me, being an athlete is being able to fight.
Yeah.
Is the number one thing. And to me, when people ask me what is being a hybrid athlete, for me, is being strong, fit, and being able to fight. So look, I'm not going someone to be a mixed martial artist. However, you do it yourself, and every man deep down will do the same thing. I think you should be strong in the gym physically. I think you should be cardiovascularly fit, mobile enough for your sport, which is martial arts, and then do a martial art. And I think if you do a grappling martial art like wrestling or jiu-jitsu, you should be proficient at striking enough. You don't be a world-class striker, but do it twice a week. Yeah. So you understand how to throw a punch and a kick. Yeah. I don't think you should be completely crippled when you throw a punch.
Yeah. And you can defend them as well.
And you can understand, and you're not flustered by that. And I promise you that will affect every aspect of your life. If you are physically fit and strong and you can fight, every single aspect of your life will go better. Your relationship with your family will go better because you feel confident. Relationship with your friends will go better because you feel confident. You'll earn more money because you feel confident. And the real confidence comes from fighting ability. It just does.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
A question I ask someone all the time is if you have Tom Aspinall, who's the UFC heavyweight champion, walk in a room, and we said this the other day, and you have Jeff Bezos walk into a room, Tom Aspinall's the man.
Yeah.
Jeff Bezos is going up to Tom Aspinall.
Yeah.
That's the reality That's the reality here. Every single man, if I put a gun to him and said, would you rather be a billionaire or be earning more money than spent, i.e. like UFC champion, but be the toughest person in the world? Every single guy will be rather be UFC champion. In fact, the point, they obviously earn more than this, but someone said you can earn very well, a few $100,000 a year and be UFC heavyweight champion. They earn more, but just put that aside. So you earn very well, you look after your family to a certain extent. Or a billionaire, they still would rather be UFC heavyweight champion with $100,000 a year. Every man would rather be that.
Yeah.
And every woman would rather be with that man.
Yeah.
Because they'll pretend, this is the funny thing with women when they go, I don't need a man. But technically, they technically don't, because they earn money. But what they can't buy or earn is physical protection. That's why women still go, people are physically strong. And if they don't, they're lying. Because the truth is they can't buy that with just having a good job. Yeah. They need someone who can physically protect them while they're pregnant. And that's why they go for a man who's strong.
Yeah. I get that walking down the street with you, mate. I just feel safe.
Feel safe. Yeah. That's why we hold hands.
Yeah, exactly. One hand on the pocket, the other one on the hand.
Was that in Prison Break? Was it?
Yeah. Prison Break.
Teabag,
yeah. Yeah, I love that, mate. And I think Danaher said something, John Danaher, one of the greatest minds in martial arts, but especially jiu-jitsu, where he's talking about having one area that you're incredibly good at attacking and then being incredibly broad with things that you can defend. So if you know how to defend every type of strike, you know how to defend every type of takedown, but you're incredibly proficient at finishing people on the floor, then that's like a good game to have, rather than trying to be okay at attacking. You might be okay at putting some damage on people, but you're probably not going to win as many fights. Whereas if you have one area of extreme dominance and you're not vulnerable anywhere else, kind of like Alex Pereira is like phenomenal at
That's what
striking.
makes the best martial art.
Yeah.
Mixed martial arts. They're usually phenomenal at one thing. They're world class.
Exactly.
And the rest are proficient enough to understand how to defend it.
Exactly. He's still hard to take down.
All of the MMA fighters are that. They're amazing at one thing and okay at the other things.
Yeah. So how, I've got a sense of this morning, but how are you getting good enough at striking and wrestling? What are your thoughts on that?
Two things that a lot of people don't do, and it's not just for your podcast, it's investing in good coaches. So that takes the guesswork out of it. Right?
Yeah.
So literally going, this is what I want. Paying someone, literally going, like, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
A lot of people will literally think they know more than they do. And the reason why it's okay in other forms of life is because there's no consequences. In these mixed martial arts, the reason why it matters so much is because you're going to get fucking smashed in the face if you don't do that. The consequence, you get knocked out in front of your friends. Whereas someone does not have to pay a coach or do something about it because the pain point isn't big enough.
Yeah.
The fear isn't big enough. So what they'll do is they literally meander through life saying they don't care about being fat. They can lie to themselves all the time, right? Oh, I don't really want to buy off you because I don't really, I like how I look. Why are you on the call? yeah, right. That means you obviously want to change shape, but they won't admit that when they ask for money. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
5 years later, still in the same shape. But the consequences don't seem high at the time. The pain isn't big enough. Does that make sense? The fear isn't big enough. So what happens is they literally meander through life lying to themselves. When you get into fighting a cage with someone, you can't lie to yourself.
Yeah.
So you have to do something about it. You have to think about it.
You'll know if you can't defend certain attacks.
Correct.
Cool. So what does your typical training week look like? Just to give the viewers a bit of insight.
So in terms of work, so what I'll do I'll do jiu-jitsu every day for the moment, because actually my main goal is jiu-jitsu now.
Yeah.
And I'm basically doing mixed martial arts training 3 times a week. So I'll do that with technique and a bit of positional sparring.
Yeah.
And then I'll do striking 3 times a week with Coach Artem. Well, this morning, he's a world-class striking coach for MMA.
Awesome. Phenomenal.
And then 3 times a week hit the bag.
Awesome.
In my basement gym, basically.
Brilliant.
Pretty much.
So wrestling, did you mention that?
Wrestling, no, because that's the mixed martial arts training.
Okay.
He's a wrestling coach. Coach Ozzy is actually a Dagestani wrestler.
Yeah.
So that's when the wrestling comes into it.
Okay.
I do a private with him once a week, which will wrestle basically with him once a week because he is the best MMA coach in the world. I'll ask him questions about tackling jiu-jitsu. At the moment, it's more jiu-jitsu based. I'm competing this year.
Okay.
Eventually, it'll be mixed martial arts based.
Got it. And are you keeping mixed martial arts back of mind when you do your jiu-jitsu?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
So luckily, my jiu-jitsu is doesn't veer that much away from MMA. So you have an idea. Just explain maybe to the audience of 1 or 2 listeners. No, true. It's us 2 listening back at it.
The listener, my mum.
And your mum doesn't listen.
Yeah.
She would have turned off by
Hopefully
now.
not. Hopefully not, anyway.
So got sidetracked. We were talking about. Sorry, I was talking about. What's he on about? Literally about. Sorry about the jiu-jitsu stuff. Sorry.
Yeah.
So, yes. So depends who you are. So my jiu-jitsu luckily relatively worked well. So I was predominantly gi was the main thing back then. My gi game was quite similar to no gi anyway. So they didn't use have any grips, and my no gi game is suited to MMA. It's basically like chest to chest guard passing. My guard is basically a lot of sweeps, etc., and wrestling up. So it's not that different. But I am, yes.
That's cool.
I'm not going to use anything that literally wouldn't work in mixed martial arts. I'm not veering too far away.
Cool.
I'll do that anyway. I wouldn't learn something that wouldn't work in MMA anyway. For me,
Fair enough.
because when I'm finished with competing to the next 5-6 years, I still would. The reason why I'm doing martial arts is to defend myself. So I'm learning it for that. Even though you're going to do some kickboxing fights, you still have in that mind, like, I do want to learn actually how to fight. So
that's why I really enjoyed this morning, to get an alternative view on, just throwing a basic kick, how you would protect from takedowns, or you could transition to a takedown from blocking or grabbing a kick. And those are things that you don't think about so much in pure kickboxing, where those threats aren't really on the table.
Of course.
And I think, like you say, most people get into martial arts with the intention of being able to protect themselves and their loved ones. But
which they should. I mean, the thing as an example would be, so when you ask someone, actually, if I ask someone, but I don't care about knowing how to fight. Okay, cool. Okay. I've been playing golf for the last 10 years. And they go, cool. Okay. And then I go to them, cool, you better than me at golf. Do you play golf? They go, no. I said, you better than me at golf? I go, no, not better. You play golf till I was 10
I'm
years.
really good at golf if I see red.
Yeah. You know I'm going.
Yeah.
I know exactly where I'm going with this. I already read this.
Yeah.
So then I go to I've been doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and wrestling for the last 15 years, 20 years.
Yeah.
And I box as well, and I kickbox.
Yeah.
I'm telling myself, but say it's made up person. I actually do that, but I say just made up person. They go,
Yeah.
and they go, sorry, and I go, but do you think you'd beat me in a fight? Oh, you know what I mean? I know a street fight when I see red. I'm like, so the reality is people care about that the most. Give an idea. Say they earn 200 grand a year.
Right.
There's a guy, millionaire, and he go, does that guy earn more than you? Like, yeah, he does. They don't care. They're like, yeah, cool. But they do care if someone can beat them up.
Yeah, of course.
Every guy does.
Yeah.
Every guy does. And girls pretend they don't care about someone can beat them up till their boyfriend gets elbowed in the skull, till they see their boyfriend, their little pot belly, actually defend themselves. Where they say they don't care about their boyfriend being tough till some bugs the house and they literally hide behind their girlfriend.
Yeah.
Trust me, they'll care. And trust me, they'll care literally, like I said before, physical altercation happens till it matters, until it actually matters, like in front of them, they think they don't care.
Yeah, of course. I completely agree. I think, why do you think it is that there's this disconnect for martial arts that there isn't for other sports? Like the golf example is a good one. And if somebody had never played a racket sport and then they think they could beat somebody who's played tennis for 20 years, even the worst person who'd played tennis consistently for 20 years would beat somebody who'd never played before, unless they had done another very similar racket sport. But for some reason in martial arts, people think that if they're aggressive enough, they can compensate for a total lack of knowledge and experience.
There's two reasons for that. I think one of them actually is the unusual one that people don't think about. I think that people think fighting is a very, very natural thing to be able to do, was actually the most unnatural movements. That's what I think a lot of it is. I think people think they know how to do them. I genuinely think it's not just arrogant. I think people generally think throwing a punch, grappling looks natural to them.
Yeah.
There's the most unnatural thing you can do.
Yeah.
People have no idea.
Yeah.
Okay. And but a lot of it is because they want to hide away from reality. That's the real reason, because it's the ultimate ego bashing, isn't it? Right? It's ultimately about someone beating you up.
Yeah.
I think that what will happen is usually, so if you walk into martial arts gym, you have a certain type of people. Say you go, it doesn't matter, boxing gym, probably martial arts gym, a wrestling gym, jiu-jitsu gym, boxing, Thai boxing, you walk in. So every single person will walk in and get beaten up the first time they go there. Okay, so you have a few options there. Number one, you could go, oh, I need to learn this, I'm crap at it, I'm much worse than I thought, and you keep going back. Okay, which is obviously what I did and you do when you go in there. I'm not good, I want to learn. And I've done, obviously I'm one of those people. Or you're one of those people that goes in there and pretend it never happened. Yeah. Which is what most people do. And people just don't like to admit what happened. They lie to themselves. They go, oh, it's not for me. The example's not for me, isn't it? So my mum used to say this, and people say, oh, and I actually am bringing this up purely to show off to people. We went to Oxford, right? And people, I mean, it's true. If you went to Oxford, they go, oh, not for me. I could have gone to Oxford. Well, you didn't. You didn't go to Oxford, did you? Literally, I admit that. Literally, I didn't go to Oxford. But it wasn't clever enough. I didn't have enough grades, right? I went to King's, by the way, so I'm still very clever.
Are you?
No, he's like, is that clever? I'm only top 20 in the world. But anyway, but you know what I mean? So anyway, so what it is, so get back to that. So yeah, people don't like the reality. I think people genuinely, not just with fighting, people hide away from reality, right? People don't like to really face themselves. And I think in martial arts, you absolutely face yourself and you can't hide from it.
Yeah.
That's the reality why.
Yeah. I think that's it goes back to the other sports conversation, in that if you play another sport, you wish that was the one that mattered most, but there's a nagging thought in the back of your mind that fighting trumps it. So you could be an NBA basketball player, but it would bother you that Tom Aspinall could wreck you when you're in the same room.
It's funny, I thought about that yesterday. I thought myself, I thought NFL players, actually loads of women love them, all this stuff, and they are stars, right?
Yeah, of course.
But
phenomenal.
Cool for them. And I respect them, it's amazing, right? But hey, it's going to sound, and I really admit this, I'm looking right in the eyes, I'd rather literally be a top 20 UFC fighter than be an NFL star. I would absolutely rather be top 20 toughest people in the world than be a multi-millionaire Tom Brady.
Yeah.
I'd rather be fucking tough.
Yeah.
I'd rather be able to know that I can put my elbow through Tom Brady's skull. And that's just the truth. Every guy would rather do that. Tom Brady, I reckon they sat him down a bit. He'll be like, you know what? Because he's always very, very honest. That's how he got to that level or something.
Yeah.
He's not going to lie to you. Somebody gets to a very high level of business or sports is going to be an honest person because they've had to be to get to that level.
Yeah.
Because they can't lie to themselves. If they lie to themselves, the consequences they don't get there.
Yeah, and they would never be good at what they do by not facing reality all the time.
Billionaires.
Yeah.
They're very honest. All of them admit they're insecure about stuff. Literally, you sat them down, they go, I'm very insecure, this is why I work that hard.
Yeah.
They'll tell you. All of them will tell you the same thing. They go, I'm very insecure.
Yeah.
Any billionaires I've met, I've actually met quite a few, luckily or unluckily, where you look, luckily, not unluckily. But they're always honest when you ask them. They go, I'm very insecure. And they keep, my insecurity comes out of me working really hard.
Yeah.
I feel like shit. I work really hard.
Yeah.
So there's athletes, I'm trying to say, I think they'll be honest with you and tell you they'd rather be a fighter.
Yeah.
Deep down.
Yeah. And I think that's why so many of the top athletes have so much respect for the UFC fighters.
They do. They all love it the most.
Yeah.
Coach Ozzy, my MMA coach, who is the best MMA coach in the world, he has Sergio Ramos commenting on him, going, you're incredible, massive respect.
Yeah.
All the footballers respect it.
Yeah.
They still see it. And Cristiano Ronaldo's, always boxing, always MMA. They love fighting.
Yeah.
They know that's the pinnacle because they respect it so much. They understand the work it takes to get there.
Yeah. It's awesome, mate.
Okay, sure.
Too loud, mate.
Too loud.
Surprise, surprise.
Loud decibels.
Sweet. So
Hyrox, man, I need to talk about Hyrox.
okay, let's get back to Hyrox.
Let's get to the Hyrox. What really matters here. So if this is a clip, I need to make it shorter. So Hyrox, I like the idea of it as being a hybrid athlete, but for me, it's not being a hybrid athlete. Being able to run around in a circle and use a rower for 1,000 meters, it's not being a hybrid athlete. Being a hybrid athlete is being fit, strong, and being able to do martial arts. Because the truth is, actually, that's the ultimate hybrid athlete, which is a mixed martial artist, right? Being physically strong, fit. What CrossFit has done is coined this idea hybrid. I don't know if you'll know this. Hyrox stands for hybrid rock star. And all jokes aside, that explains the attitude of what Hyrox is. And if you go to any gym, we're not saying the high level Hyroxers, I'm sure they're lovely. Same with CrossFit. High level guys are really, really cool people. But the guys who do it in the gym recreationally, that basically were never good at sports at school, got put in at school, and they never could play a sport, proper sport like rugby or football or martial arts, they stick to Hyrox and think they're better than everyone. But secretly, they're a wank stain. And yes, even though, and they know deep down someone who would, like me, would have believed them at school. I mean, so I genuinely joke to your podcast. I genuinely think they know. That's what was rude.
You just bully them on the
bully them in the gym instead, yeah, and on a podcast. But no, the people that basically don't have, they're basically people that don't have a place, so they need to feel they belong to something. Hyrox, the guy I don't know who the guy invented it.
I don't know by name. He's actually a really nice bloke, very smart bloke.
That's what I was going to say. So he's actually, that's the whole point again with Greg Glassman with CrossFit. He's an incredibly smart marketer. So he will know factually that people want a low entry to level to feel like a hybrid athlete. So he created the sport that had a low level of entry that anyone could compete in, and created a community aspect. So you saw that good part of CrossFit. CrossFit was good for community, but the level of entry was too high, learning all gymnastics skills and weightlifting. So you know what, we'll create this sport. He's a genius, right? Yeah. Okay. He's incredibly clever. Yeah. And the guys coming at the top level are very fit. Yeah. However, the average guy that does it, jump from thing to thing, an example would be all these PTs that become hybrid coaches. I'm like, you're not fit or strong. So if I want to be small and weak, maybe I should follow you. Or not have any qualifications, maybe I should follow you. Didn't go to university like I did, Ashley did.
Yeah. I think that there's a couple of good things in there. That one of the big strokes of genius for Hyrox is capitalizing where CrossFit fell short. And I think
it's genius.
They sort like this. I mean, we could do a whole nother podcast on the failings of CrossFit, but obviously there's loads of great stuff about both, I think. But one of the things that CrossFit really struggled with was they used to have this marketing campaign saying it's for everyone, and they'd show somebody who's 300 pounds doing box squats next to a granny. And then
I think it's the opposite. It's GAT guys actually.
No, next to like a games athlete who's doing 200 kilo back squats for reps, and saying, everything's scalable. But I think everyone who's really in it knows that there are some barriers to entry, and there were lots of people who didn't give it a go because it was too intimidating, because there was so much to it. And even in some of the open workouts, there would be huge roadblocks for people if they hadn't got double unders, if they hadn't got a ring muscle up.
What about the skipping?
Yeah, they just couldn't compete or couldn't get a good score in those workouts, even if they were fit and strong in their own eyes. And Hyrox just removed all those barriers so that absolutely anyone could do it, which I think is
very smart.
A smart thing and a good thing for exercise participation, because you could have somebody with a very low training age finish a Hyrox and feel very accomplished. Good, and I think with all these things, it starts to, the lines start to blur when that's presented as the pinnacle of fitness. Like if you have a good Hyrox time, then you're a good athlete, and that's where it starts to...
You put it better than I could.
Yeah.
And that's where the arrogance comes in, literally, where people then will like start looking down on other people because they do Hyrox. I'm like, slow down there, sailor, literally. You're still a gimp. No, that's the truth. And I still, again, would fully do at school. That was true. They do see it in gym, they start strutting around with their tops off, literally. Yeah. I was like, mate, I still could literally hold you down and I don't know nothing about it. But they do. I've seen it in gyms. That's not genuinely, they do have a bad attitude. They do. They're walking around staring everyone down like, mate, you literally can row for 1,000 meters.
Yeah. But I think it's like everyone's trying to define the rules that suit them best. That's the way I see it.
That's spot on.
What are the strengths that I have? What am I good at? And then I want that to be the most important metric for everybody else to measure everyone else by. And at the end of the day, that's an opinion, not fact. And if you think having a world record Hyrox time is better than being a CrossFit Games champion, that's an opinion, not a fact. And everything is some iteration of that. Like, I'm defining the rules as this.
Well, it's with hierarchy, actually. We talk about this all the time.
Yeah.
Our brains are based on hierarchy. So whatever those parameters are for you in your tribe, right? So your tribe might be on penis length. Luckily, it's not in my tribe. It's got to be fucked. It's actually small. It's actually fucked. It's actually on how small it is.
That's how you win.
Yeah, I win every single time. So I created that in my tribe. Actually, in parts of Asia, it's actually seen as regal.
The King of Kings.
No, it's true. Do you know some cultures, they're seen as grotesque being too big, like lower class. No tribe. It's just my tribe.
Oh, that's too big.
I'd say 3 inches.
Well,
that's too big. Way too big. Too much.
What are you going to do with all that?
Too much. Oh, what guys are done?
I really hope my mum's not listening.
So they do about the parameters being serious. They might say it's Hyrox, whatever they're in. And I think that rather than, I think you're quite honest to yourself. I literally was very honest from like a bit ill when I was young. Literally, when I asked my parents, right, when I was young, like, I want to do that, and that is what I've seen as the best, and I'll just fit around that.
Yeah.
Rather than around, I'll fit the narrative around me. So to give an example, be someone who's really overweight, the sort of body positivity thing, right? Rather than do something about it, they change the parameters. So what they'll do is go, oh, it's beautiful any size. I love being fat. It's like, rather than going, actually, I'd rather lose weight. So they basically create that narrative that actually that's positive being overweight. Whereas, no, exactly, rather than actually being honest with themselves, the parameter really we know is being lean. Like man and woman being lean and athletic is seen as sexually attractive. But all they'll do is change the narrative to suit themselves. And the same thing with Hyrox is I basically want Hyrox to be the best because it's easy. It's not easy, obviously it's a hard event.
But it suits me better for where I am right now.
It suits me better for where I am now. Whereas the honest truth is, for a man, like we said before, being an MMA fighter, if I could start my life again, but unfortunately I can't, I would do MMA. I'm honest with myself. I can't do that now, but I can win some high-level jiu-jitsu medals, and then be very happy with that and be respected, and look at myself for some MMA fights, right? But if I could start my life again, I'd be a professional fighter. Of course I would.
That's an interesting. Like, if you now, similar to CrossFit, now that MMA has grown in popularity and is more widespread through the world, you get people wanting to be an MMA fighter from the very start of their sporting career, in the same way that you get people wanting to be a CrossFit athlete from the start of their sporting career.
Yes,
you didn't have.
Yeah,
you didn't used to have. People would start with one sport or one style of gym training and then move towards CrossFit from there, in the same way you would be a kickboxer and then move towards MMA, or you'd be a jiu-jitsu athlete. So now that that's on the table, if you were starting from scratch as a child, what foundations would you lay to become the best mixed martial artist by the time you're an adult?
It's a very, very good question. I'm so smug when you ask that question. So when
it's off the cuff as well.
So you would start. So basically, what I'll do with my son when he's older, I've always relive my dreams through him and give him trauma, which is what I'm going to do straight away, and physically threaten him. But the thing, if he doesn't do what I'm going to say now, no, being serious, I would start. You would start with grappling when you're very young. So you'll do wrestling as a base, absolutely wrestling, and then after a few years, you'll do some jiu-jitsu, because they integrate together as a grappling martial arts.
Yeah,
and I'll get them to do some sort of Thai boxing.
Yeah,
and I'll do that twice a week. Even doesn't have to be their mainstay, but when they're very young, they'll be able to do Thai boxing through. So, say you're doing any sport, say you can train them every day. I believe everyone should exercise every day anyway. So you'll wrestle probably 3 times a week, and do jiu-jitsu 3 times a week and a day off, right? Okay. And then we get a certain age and make them do a little bit of striking, a little bit of kickboxing, basically. And that will be the best base. And it's funny you said about now people are starting mixed martial arts from scratch.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say to go to MMA. That's their right. So I already went to martial arts. Then after a certain age, when he's proficient after 4 years of each, maybe 16, 17, then I'll get him to do sort of MMA training to combine them.
Yeah.
The thing with the MMA thing is, it's been going on now for quite a while, 30 years, 32 years. If you look at it, you'll think, wow, there'll be a load of MMA fighters now, pure MMA fighters. And I remember this back then, 20 years ago, when at jiu-jitsu, people going, well, it's going to be the old thing. We have a black belt jiu-jitsu who can barely strike, who does a bit of striking afterwards. We're going to have world champion kickboxers and world champion jiu-jitsu guys. That hasn't happened and will never happen.
Yeah, that's true.
It will never happen, because the real reason is because it takes too much time. The reason MMA fighters, the average age of a UFC fighter champion, I think 33.
Yeah.
Old. Seems old, right? A football player would be end of their career. Right, we have Ronaldo, etc. that are unusual because he looks after himself, etc.
Yeah.
We can see we're getting older, but how about 33 and the tail end of a career? Pretty much 2 years left. 35 we're done.
Yeah.
But MMA, you're almost like your peak, right? You're getting heavyweight, they're literally late 30s, 40s. These guys, pure looking champions in the mid 40s. The reason for this is, so Roger Gracie, my jiu-jitsu instructor, is the best grappler ever lived. He said to me, what it is the amount you lose in speed over the years in your 30s, 40s, you gain in technical knowledge. So there'll be a point where you're still fast enough, even though you're slower, but the technical knowledge is growing and growing and growing. But then there's a point where it crosses, and then you're too slow, even though your technique is getting better. Yeah, and that's the point you start to go downhill. An example, like with a surgeon, what's the peak for a surgeon? A surgeon actually is mid 50s. The reason for that, technically, they're getting more knowledge, right? It's your brain, but there's a point where the ability to do find movements doing surgery where they're just too old. Yeah, and they're hands, etc. So the point was 55. They gain more knowledge, but actually they just can't move their hands as well. It's the same with MMA. You basically keep gaining more knowledge, but there's a point where you get too slow, and that's different for every weight division actually. So if you have heavyweights, the peak is late 30s, mid 40s. The reason is for that you lose speed, but you're just as strong physically, if not strong because you get older. So if you're a strong man, it's quite old. Tendon strength gets better. We spoke about this earlier. Tendons and ligaments have less blood supply to them, so adaptation takes longer. So even though the muscles will get very strong young, the tendons and ligaments won't be as strong. So particularly for martial arts and combat sports, you need the tendons and ligaments to be strong. Yeah, for sure. Very, very, very strong. Give you that kind of man strength. Yeah. Stop it getting injured as well.
Yeah, it's a great answer. It reminds me of something I thought about a lot before, in that between those 3 areas of MMA, the more forgiving to aging art would be
grappling,
like
absolutely
gi, Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
Gi Brazilian jiu-jitsu, the oldest,
and you still get some guys who are amazing even older, because it's a slower variant compared to no gi, and because they're so experienced and so knowledgeable, they can offset the decrease in athleticism. Whereas with striking, even if you're amazing and so knowledgeable, if you're off the pace and somebody can just beat you to the punch every time. Doesn't matter how much you know. They
Timing,
can jab you to
timing,
death.
right?
Yeah.
But then in jiu-jitsu or grappling and wrestling, if you are technique is correct, smash them. Doesn't make any difference. It's a skill, right? So if your technique is precise enough and you're physically strong, you're going to murder them, right? You're fit enough. Recently at the ADCC, which is like the Olympics, so you're grappling. A guy called Cyborg. He at 44 came second in the world. He's 45 now. I think he just turned 45. So actually, yeah, it was at our gym actually. He's 44. And I said to Cyborg, he's really cool dude. I go to him like, how long are you going to do this for? He goes, brother, I'm going to do this to the day my heart stops. And, and I get it. He just loves it. He goes, I just love it. He goes, I don't care. I don't think about my age. I just enjoy it.
It's no-gi as well, isn't it?
No, yeah. So it was just faster, right?
Yeah.
But I think literally what he said was, he goes, I love it. So I don't think about it. I do think a lot of it is because people decide they're getting older. I know that is the reason. So other things take priority. An example of this, I'm sure you get clients going to you, I can't lose weight, my metabolism slows down. And we spoke about this the other day. Metabolism doesn't slow down to the 70. Zero. There's zero slowdown at all. If it does slow down, it's so small, it's like 2 or 3 calories per year or something. So really it's because people get fatter because they're just lazy and don't eat as well. It's absolutely nothing to do with their age. Zero.
Yeah, that's super cool. Do you think you'll regress to gi grappling when you're older?
Never, mate. I promise you this. I'll be the 70-year-old mate grappling with everyone, mate.
Yeah,
upping my gear cycle. No, being serious. I'll carry on literally till I physically can't do it. There's a guy actually at our jiu-jitsu club back in London, a guy called Big Dave. Big Dave is 50 now. Forgive me if he's not 50, but he smashes all the world champion, adult black belt champions, and he's 50.
I've heard about him. Yeah. He's the one that everyone says is the best jiu-jitsu player that no one's heard of.
Yeah, he actually is in the world. Yeah, I've seen guys who are multiple world champions come down and tap them 6 times in 5 minutes, and he literally now moves like a snail. But I always told David, literally, he's like his knees, he can barely stand up. He just sits down, like crawls around on the floor pretty much. We just crush people. And I've seen world champions that come in and they're like, they'll spar with him. They're like on the side of the match going, and they're like that. And they're like, it's okay, the guy's an animal. They're like, no, it wasn't normal. I don't understand. He has a big grey beard. And it's just really cool, man. But he just loves it, man. He's been training a long, long time, but he's just hard as nails.
Yeah, brilliant. James, I'm afraid we're out of time. We could talk forever, so we'll have to do another one another point in future. But where can everybody hear more of your controversial and offensive content?
On Grindr. I'm at James Cooper BTX on Instagram. And my website, bodytransformationlondon.com for my online training and my gym.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
Let's look forward to part 2.
Thank you, mate.
I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I did. And whether you agree or disagree with James's opinions, I think you've got to admire the passion with which he embodies everything that he's saying as well. But as ever, guys, if you would like to see anybody else on the podcast, please do let us know. And if you are a health and fitness or rehab professional, please do check out thetrainingstimulus.com. We have a school community with a ton of free educational material, masterclasses on back pain, knee injuries, shoulder and overhead mechanics. We have a new exercise of the week broken down nearly every week, as well as a ton of hot topics and case studies and biomechanical breakdowns. But that's it for today, guys. I hope you have a great one, and we'll speak to you next week.